Hello, and welcome to your massage. I'd love to start by just taking a look at your skin, if you don't mind. I just want to see if there are any areas that look a bit sensitive. If there are any injuries that I should avoid. Just making sure we're all good to go. Okay, and it looks like everything is all clear. So, to start our massage, I'd love to do some manual lymphatic drainage. And that's actually going to start down here in these little depressions. They're called fossas. So I'm going to start. This is going to be very gentle. I'm going to start here. We're just going to just uber sensitively here, uber gently, just opening up this drainage point. This is called the supraclavicular node, meaning it is above the clavicle. And I'm just using these little circling movements here. And we're just going skin deep. And we're going to work our way up the neck. This allows these areas to drain out a bit. Because what happens if it rains and your gutters are full on your house? Well, they just overflow. They can't actually divert the rain where they're supposed to go. So this is like cleaning the gutters so that we can divert the lymph to where it's supposed to go. So your lymph system, your lymphatic system, is trying to get your lymph, which is, like, for example, if 100% of your blood leaves your heart, the rest of your body, not all of it comes back, most of it, say like 95%. And that 5% can get trapped elsewhere. And so part of the job of the lymph system is to pick up that blood that didn't come back and to bring it back to the heart. So it's like your sanitation system. Very important. Okay. We're going to do the submental and submandibular nodes underneath the jaw. We're doing this just very gently here. So we want any fluid that's present in the face to drain down into the supraclavicular node, and then that can do its job and take the lymph where it needs to go. But it's not backed up. We're going to be coming around in the post-auricular, pre-auricular areas. just using these little circles where I'm circling down and letting the skin just pull me back up. So pressure downward, no pressure upward. And that encourages the flow of fluid downwards. Good. Okay, and right by the ears. When we get this, we're just going to just do some long, sweeping strokes. Just encourage everything to flow downwards. Okay, so I'm just going to use my hands to encourage the fluid to travel along the system. This is going to be a dry massage so that in certain parts we can get a good grip. Makes it less messy, and there are certain parts where it wouldn't work if we had any slip. Okay. Letting this trail downwards. Good. Okay. And then we're just going to warm up the rest of the skin. We're going to be focusing on the face primarily, but may sometimes just bring everything down to the neck. So while I'm giving the massage, I like to chat about a topic, something that can be tuned out, but still has a bit of background noise, if you'd like, or if it does interest you. Then it can add to the experience, if you don't mind. Okay, so in another life, I was a horticulturalist. So I adored it very much. I wanted to start my own greenhouse one day, but life circumstances, you know. So maybe I won't ever get to do that, but that doesn't mean the knowledge goes away. My particular forte was in houseplants, but also I could pretty much tell you the height, width, and habit of any shrub, tree, or perennial. Now, I couldn't do that so much for annuals, but I could tell you what was what just by looking at it, cultivars and whatnot. So there's a few terms there that maybe you recognize, maybe you don't. An annual is a plant that generally flowers the entire time, but it's only good for the growing season. If it doesn't seed itself, then it will just die. So you have to plant it annually. A perennial generally has a specific season, or maybe two. You have black-eyed Susans, rudbeckia being the Latin name. I particularly like rudbeckia aurata. But those tend to bloom in the summertime until the fall, until the frost. But other plants like, let's say, Amsonia. Love Amsonia. It's beautiful. Amsonia is a little more on the spring side. Sometimes it can come a little bit into the summer, but it's more of a spring plant. Lenten roses at the end of the winter, into the early spring, that sort of thing. So perennials will keep coming back year after year unless something happens. And they have a shorter window of bloom time, but they tend to be less maintenance. I've got a tool that I'd like to use on your face for specific pressure points. I'm going to show you on a non-tender part of the face. Let's start right here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to secure the tool, use it like this, and then we can just use a finger to rub the spot, because it can be a bit, it's a little point of pressure. It can be a little intense, so this helps to soothe that. On this side it would feel like this. A little bit of soothing here. Is that okay with you? Okay, let's start along the eyebrows then. A tropical plant is a plant that would not normally grow in your horticultural zone. That tell you what the minimum average temperature is. And tropicals tend to be things that can grow in the south, like Florida, Mexico, California. Maybe it's in the Bahamas, that sort of thing. And those include plants like hibiscus, the candy-colored ones, rather than the hardy ones, and the rose of Sharon or Althea. You have mandevilla, bougainvillea. You can have rosemary. It's more of a Mediterranean plant. But these tend to be very bright and colorful with exceptional bloom power. And then your be smaller than trees, at least most trees. If they're on standard, that means that it's basically a bush on top of a stick so that it looks like a tree. You can have lilacs on standard. I've seen 9-bark on standard. I've seen all sorts of things. But typically they tend to be fuller. They're not pruned as much so that you have a naked main branch in the middle like you do with trees. Because if you leave trees to just do their thing, a lot of them can have a very bushy habit. They have to be kind of trained that way sometimes. Just cutting off little side shoots. And you can have giant bushes like viburnums. Get like 6-7 feet tall, up to 8, depending on the variety. I like a Korean spice viburnum myself. Those tend to be in the 4 to 5, 4 to 6 foot range. You can get smoke bushes. Those get massive. 8 to 10 feet, if I remember correctly, maybe even a bit bigger. Oak leaf hydrangeas, 6 to 8 feet, depending on variety. Panicle hydrangeas, or hydrangea paniculata. If you get the bigger varieties, those are 6 to 8 feet. And that's wide as well. That's not just tall. And then you have your trees, which typically, unless you get a multi-stem specimen, which multi-stem means that it looks more like a bush, which you see, for example, with serviceberry. Serviceberry is an excellent example. I love a serviceberry that's multi-stem. But generally, you have just your main trunk, and then your branches can form a vase shape. They can be triangular, they can be more rounded. Typically, the Norway maples can be quite rounded in their habit. Those are the Crimson King Norway maple. It has burgundy leaves. Just going to go right in here at the eye. Be very careful. Okay. My nails are short, so I'm not going to poke you with that, but just going to soothe the area here. And then houseplants are things that you can use outside. I love, for example, a croton in fall displays because of their red, orange, and yellow leaves. But you would treat them then like tropical annuals. But houseplants can be very beneficial for your mood, for your home's air quality. There's this study of like 10 plants that NASA had studied for their air purification properties. And I think actually it was that all the plants did have those properties, some of it better than others, but that was just what they tested. So it doesn't mean that other plants couldn't help purify the air. That's just what they had used. It's been a long time, but I think that's how it went. But on that list, it was things like peace lilies and spider plants. But I've had my hand in growing everything, really. I've had to plant trees in the big containers. I've had to propagate plants or take pieces off of a plant to make new ones. I did have a particular specialty in knowing what plants we sold that were native to my state, Iowa. Just very passionate about all plants, except for water plants. I don't like water plants very much. Okay, let's see. Eyebrows. Let's do the jaw here. All kinds of cool plants for all kinds of cool applications. One of my favorites is a tricolor beech, which has, well, 3 color leaves generally, and they like more of a partially shaded place to grow. Because with too much sunlight, the leaves can scorch. You can see that a lot with people with hostas, where they should be planted more on a north or east exposure, where you'll get morning sun. But they get planted in the south or west. And in the spring they look nice, they're full, they're beautiful, and then come summer, they get just blasted with the heat. But that can be true of plenty of plants. Some plants will surprise you and they can be more adaptable than you think. Some of them, they're crybabies. They're like, I know that I wanted partial sun, but this is not enough for me. But if you put it in full sun, oh no, this is not what I wanted whatsoever. They're very persnickety. They're living things. So they don't act all the same, even within the same cultivar. I used to collect rare plants. Unfortunately, we had a snowstorm that knocked out our power for an entire week, so we lost everything. And we had a very, very valuable collection. Rare orchids and cacti and all sorts of things. I had all kinds of Tradescantia. That's one of my favorite plant genus? I think so. So that's the first word. So, wandering plants and striped inch plants and the nanook, tradescantia. And my partner was the orchidologist. Had all sorts of orchids of different colors. Hard to find. I've only seen it a couple of times in the many years that I worked in horticulture. It's called the Devil's Backbone, and it has a blue-green stem that zigzags, and the leaves are white and green. When it has enough sunlight, they also turn pink. Extremely highly caustic, so you can get burns from them if the sap gets on you. It's part of the euphorbia family, and that sap can range from being a mild irritant to very dangerous. So we are going to do a little bit of face percussion. I'm going to put my hand down like this, and then just tap on my fingers there, so you get a little bit of that sensation. Just like that, okay. Let me know if it's too much. I also had one of my favorite cacti was, and here's the thing with the Latin names is a lot of times we use English pronunciation, the Latin names, and sometimes it can be quite a bit mispronounced. But we called it a Cereus peruvianus monstros, or monster cactus. And I always said that it looked like in the trailer for the movie The Haunting in Connecticut, that plume of smoke that comes out of the kid's mouth is what it looks like, except it's a blue-green color too. And I loved that one very much as well. Extremely slow to grow. I had a saguaro cactus that over the 6 years that I had it, it only grew like an inch. Very slow growing as well. I am a particular sucker for native plants, prairie plants. You know, in southern Iowa, we have native prickly pear cactus. The scientific name, Puncha, but in Latin it would be to work with the acupoints in the face. Do some facial acupressure. I'm going to start right here. I'm just going to press and release. Very gentle. Press and release. We have all kinds of wild things here in Iowa. We have native rattlesnakes, which I did not like learning. We have native lizards. We have a decent amount of native reptiles. They're not native right now, but sometimes you find armadillos. Sometimes you find bears. Sometimes you find elk. I mean, everybody from everywhere comes through. We have native coyotes and we have native mountain lions, although generally you'll hear them called cougars here. And more often than not, I hear people describe coyotes as coyotes. Which is not quite right, but hear it quite a bit. Just going around the orbit of the eyes. There's quite a few surprising things around here, not just plant-wise. We have this very beautiful place. It's rather unique. Up in northeastern Iowa. That's part of the driftless section, the Paleozoic Plateau. And this is an area that has karst topography. So we have these caves and sinkholes, these very deep valleys, these very tall bluffs where glaciers did not wear everything smooth. And that extends into like Wisconsin. And I've been up there a couple of times. It's very gorgeous, especially in the fall, because of the rises and falls of the hills and valleys, and seeing all the different colored trees, your oranges, reds, yellows, browns, seeing them over this undulating landscape. Pretty darn cool. And you can get some pretty cool plants up there that I think are fairly unique to the area. I don't know very much about what is unique up there. focusing on the cheeks. Plants are pretty darn cool. I used to go to quite a few botanical centers, St. Louis, Chicago, and they're just my absolute favorite places to be. Last time I went to one was in St. Louis at the Missouri Botanical Garden, and there is this big lake outside. It was April, but St. Louis was so warm. So I sat by the lake next to a brilliantly blooming rhododendron. It wasn't an azalea. It must have been an azalea because it was a red blooming bush. And I just listened to the water, the little lake. There was another brilliant azalea on the little island in the middle of the lake. Just gorgeous. Just beautiful. Okay, so we are going to finish with some last manual lymphatic drainage. We stirred things up a bit, so I'm going to come back and just do a quick little drain of the supraclavicular nodes and work up so that everything's clear and ready to get this next influx of lymph fluid. I'm not going to spend as much time as I did before because we really have opened that up in the beginning. This is just making sure we're all cleared out. I really loved it. As a horticulturalist, I really would love to see the giant sequoias. I'd love to see a jungle too, but sequoias are a little more attainable. I want to see the rainforests of the Pacific Northwest. All the ferns and things like that. I love a forest ecosystem. Love seeing all of that. So, just going to drain everything down. Yeah, I really didn't even talk about ferns. Love ferns. They're so delicate and breezy and soft and just easygoing, I guess. Not in terms of growing them. I can be very persnickety that way. But when you see them out in the wild, they just look so frilly and carefree. Just going to just slide all this across and down, working to the nearest node, and then going down. And you know what I'd also really love to see is a desert, because I just can't wrap my head around. You know, I grew cacti as a job, but to have them just basically be weeds, like they just grow everywhere, that seems so funny and just odd to me. I'd love to see saguaro cacti. I want to see the big giant prickly pears. I just find that so fascinating. And I know that for people who live in that environment, it's like, really? The desert? Bring a book, girl. But if you've never seen something before, but like only on just a very tiny scale, it's gonna be a lot more magical. Also, I just love plants of all kinds. Bring this down to the neck, down, good. Just gonna keep sliding all this to the nearest node and then just go down. I'd really love to see a palm tree as well. I've seen some very big palms in terms of in botanical gardens, but to just see it, like, look out your window and see a bunch of palms, that just, I know it's equivalent to seeing normal trees, but again, the novelty. This down, 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 good. Sliding across. Just pushing the fluid to the nearest node. Across the upper lip here. Chin. Drain down. Good. Okay. Let's take a look here. So, the skin's a bit red since we've really gone at it a bit, but I don't see any puffiness. It doesn't look dull. It looks like there's just like this like glow underneath the skin. So everything looks like it has this fresh blush to it. Okay. That's going to conclude our massage today. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a